as you, Vedran, already mentioned, that politicians, political leaders, and they misuse, they use still war narratives and to make these divisions even deeper. And beside this Corona crisis, we are approaching to the local elections this year, and I'm afraid, this is just my opinion, that this rhetoric will take place in Bosnia and Herzegovina soon, and that I don't know, will this issue about school become again put on a table at the same way. But what I don't want, I already took a lot of time, so this is basically what we are doing, and if do you have any questions, please ask me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Liljeta, for the first input. We are still waiting for Samir Bekaric, but there are two other colleagues that will also give us an input in this part of the discussion. Irena Petrovic, if you would like to take the Zoom.
Hi everyone, Irena will be joining us in a minute, but okay. I can give an introduction basically to our organization. Great. So Youth Initiative for Human Rights is a non-governmental organization that is active in Bosnia and Herzegovina as of 2006. We are part of a regional network of Youth Initiative for Human Rights with offices in Croatia, Serbia, Kosovo, and Montenegro. Basically, what Youth Initiative is doing, we are doing various activities based on our three pillars. First is youth activism, second is providing non-formal education, and third one, the biggest one so far, is dealing with the past. Unfortunately, it's the biggest one because we are now talking 25 years after the war, and there's still a lot of our activities and a lot of general activities of NGO sector in Bosnia and Herzegovina are connected to consequences of the war. One of the consequences of the war, at least consequences of Bosnia-Croat conflict, is these institutions of two schools under one roof. In our work that is dedicated to dealing with the past, most important topic among others is reconciliation. And since interaction is the first step toward reconciliation, it's really tragic that now 25 years after the war, in such a small country that Bosnia and Herzegovina is, an even smaller entity that Federation is, we still have institutional obstacles put between young people to at least start and that first step towards reconciliation. Although these young people maybe in some cases doesn't even have to be reconciliated since they didn't have any conflict among themselves. But unfortunately, young people are carrying this burden of, if I may say, older generations that left to them. So unfortunately, Jajce is not the only case of this, if I may say, institutional educational segregation. Thanks, although to other organizations and primarily to young people of Jajce, that this case of Jajce was brought to the media attention. We have had experiences in organizing our activities with trying to get institutional support in terms of several activities that needed to have official Ministry of Education approval, so to enter and to work with schools. Unfortunately, our experience with even having the official approval in organizing various activities that were gathering young people from high schools from Bosnia and Herzegovina has showed us that there are not officials from schools that are divided. At least those that are going with the Croatian educational plan and program are not that much interested in joining the activities that are grouping all students from different ethnic groups, which obviously with some exceptions, but generally exceptions means that if you have a sympathetic director or sympathetic teacher that wants to provide his or her students with an opportunity to interact with someone else, but generally directors are not really well disposed to this. If maybe they see as some left-wing Soros-led international organizations. So far we are basically trying to get to individuals, as the case in Yaice with a group of great young people that have decided to step up and say something. So we are aiming or trying to get to the individuals, to young people, because so far general politics is not giving us hope for resolving this issue. I mean, I still remember the words of Education Ministry of Central Bosnia Canton. I think it was 10 years ago, even more, when she said that pears and apples shouldn't be mixed. And unfortunately, even 10 years later, the situation is not much better. Not to mention only Yaice and Mostar, but there are also other small municipalities all around Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina, especially in Herzegovina and Central Bosnia, that are actively discouraging young people from interacting. Obviously, there are other organizations, non-governmental and maybe sport clubs, other maybe cultural, non-formal groups that are providing the space for young people to interact, which is the most important first step towards that reconciliation. But otherwise, there is little, if not at all, interaction between them. So I think that's some kind of issue that will harass us for the next period, unless we try to solve it in a way that we, as a non-governmental section, can, but obviously without official institutional politics behind this issue. I think that this is something that unfortunately we may be having a webinar or a seminar in years' time or 5 years on something like that. When Irena comes, she will be also getting this introduction any minute now. So far, so good from me now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fuad. I mean, what you just described is basically this kind of a moment that we have so often in the realm of civil society engagement and engaged citizens work towards democracy. That many engaged individuals and organizations contribute and fight the fight, but the institutional framework and the political framework is simply not allowing basically for any substantial change to happen. Then if I just might ask you a kind of a small additional question, what is basically then, I mean, Youth Initiative for Human Rights has been fighting for so long, not only in Bosnia, but also in other parts of the region. What's the intrinsic motivation to continue that kind of struggle and engagement that you have, having in mind all those different contextual kind of spirits or ghosts basically pushing you down?
Yeah, well, as I like to say, small steps are those that matter. Obviously, without institutional support for general process of reconciliation and moving forward throughout the whole region, not to mention our country, we are, I wouldn't say satisfied, but we are motivated by individual reactions of participants of our activities. I remember, because they're all individual stories, but these individual stories means that you, as an organization, through your activity, had managed to, if I may say so, touch someone in that way that he or she that came to your activity with stories that depends on his or her narrative back home. So that he's now changed in terms that he or she has realized that she didn't have to be afraid of others. In terms of what I'm talking about, we are talking about young people, because most of our activities are with young people. So that's persons up to the age of 20 or even less. So we have had cases with participants coming from dominate one ethnic group. In this case, let's say, for example, this was the case of our participants from Serbia, who before he came to our activity, he's a high school student, his parents told him to for him to be very careful, not to say out loud his name, to be very careful what he said about, talk about regarding this subject of war. And when he came home, he wrote to me, he said, I couldn't believe that my parents were all trying to frighten me to be scared of interaction with others, when there is really no need for that, because we all are, these young people are all young people with same hobbies, same interests, same worries, and basically they are not that different at all. And this is one example of one individual who, through opportunity of interaction with others, realized that there is no some scary Muslim or scary crowd that he should be afraid of. So basically, these are these individual, if I may say so, success stories. So this is what basically every non-governmental organization is doing right now through its activities. It's trying to reach out to groups of people. So small steps. If you made to, let's say this year, if you have activities that can number up to 100 or 200 young people, that means 200 opportunities to change one person's narrative. And that could be shared to his family, neighbor, and so on. Obviously, this is very difficult because we are living in a time where media and general narrative in country is revolving around politics or elections, which again brought up different and hard topics, obviously relating to war. But as non-governmental organizations, we all can do that small effort or huge effort to produce currently small results, but our hope we have to have hope, you know, to try to change at least anything that we can do. So small steps, as I said.
May I
thank you for
add something?
Small steps and big dreams. Yes, Julieta. Yes, of course. We can open up the discussion now. Yeah.
I'm so sorry, but I heard, and I know that a lot of my colleagues from NGO sector have a lot of obstacles by, as Samir said, by principle of schools and from the institutions in general. But I have to say that we as NDC Sarajevo, we cannot complain about that. That's why we engaged institutions, we work through institutions, and we have so, I mean, our approach is really holistic. So we are involving political parties, politicians, and we involve principals. And for example, in Yaitsil, we never had any obstacles from principals. So we work with through schools. In Republika Srpska as well, we have permission to work in all over Bosnia and Herzegovina, although we approached with request just to work in schools in Mrkonjić Grad and Jezero. So it is really, I mean, long-term, it is, our work is process-oriented, and all that all of us from NGOs achieve, make changes, it is really important because all of us contribute a lot from our sides, and then one day, I'm sorry, I mean, it takes time, but I believe that, and I'm sure that we will make, and we already made a lot of changes. So at the beginning of our work, we had obstacles from mayors, from municipalities who became our greatest supporter. For example, when we lost fundings from Norwegian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, we have been supported in Srebrenica and Bratunac by mayors to keep on our activities. Also, we have contribution from local authorities, from Jajce, from Jezero, and from Mrkonjić Grad and Vareš for our work. I mean, it is small amount of money, of course. Those municipalities don't have I mean, a lot of money in their budgets, but that's also, that's, I would like, I mean, don't take me wrong, but I would like to say that there are a lot of obstacles, but it's possible to work through institutions.
Could I ask a quick question?
This is just go on.
Julieta, how many schools, two schools under one roof, are there in a federation right now?
I tried to get exact data about that, and
Around-ish.
yeah, and OSC is the organization who has it, and they are not sure. It is about 56, but it's not the exact data.
Okay, 56. And are there any research on children's attitudes, interethnic attitudes, behaviors in those schools, comparing to the schools that are not under the same system?
I'm not sure. We did one small, really small action research with students from high schools in Jajce after the protests, since all of them came from divided schools, two schools under one roof. And this research is posted on academia.
And are there any people in academia that are actually involved in this kind of research or willing to help with data in order to prove how the system, or what does the system actually do to the children?
Yes and no. So, I mean, my colleague Nebojša Šavija-Valka, I don't know, Dinka, have you had a chance to meet with him? He's
I don't think so.
He has PhD on social anthropology, and so he was in charge for this research. We did it together. But from official academia, we didn't. Yes, we had and we have very good cooperation with Sabina Čehajić-Klenzi, you know, Sabina, from the International University. So, but with the academia, it is, yes, as I said, it is.
I'm asking because the situation in Vukovar region in Croatia is actually similar, with Croats and Serbs going to different classes and different schools, etc. But what we do here is actually to follow over the past 20 years how the interethnic attitudes and interethnic behaviors have been changing over the course of, as I said, 20 years, almost 20 years. And we do have exact data on what this kind of schooling does to the kids and let alone parents. But let me ask only one quick question. Are there any extracurricular activities that are joined in the two schools under one roof system?
This is exactly what we are doing as NDC Sarajevo. All our activities are extracurricular activities.
Okay, I mean official extracurricular activities.
No.
Within the regular
only
group.
I mean NGOs. I mean not only NDC Sarajevo, a lot of other colleagues from other organizations, right, like Youth Initiative, and are doing that. And that only comes from NGOs.
So would anyone else like to jump in? As I just want to welcome a few colleagues that joined us in the meantime. I see Dafina Peci from Tirana. And I believe Dafina Samir still hasn't managed to make it to the webinar, but if he joins us later, he could make a short input to Jajce, because he was one of those young students that engaged in Jajce very much and that were awarded with the prize of the Council of Europe later on.
Vedran, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for interrupting all of you, and I apologize because my husband is he's in very bad health conditions. So I have just got a message from the hospital, so I have to leave the meeting. I'm so sorry. If someone has other questions, I can stay 5 minutes more.
No, Julieta, all the best to your husband. I mean, no problem at all. If you manage to join us on Wednesday or on Friday, we will be very happy. But we totally understand if you have to go now. But thanks again for your input, and thanks for your work.
Thank you, and sorry once again to all of you. Sorry.
We understand.
No
Thanks a lot, Julieta.
All the best.
Thank you.
All the best.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. So before we move to the next session, I just wanted to ask, as Đuro Blanuša from the Regional Youth Cooperation Council is still with us, and Rajko has, I mean, from the very beginning, has had this goal to invest into youth cooperation. Dafina Peci was also on board, and many others. So basically, Đuro, if you could just in 1 or 2 sentences basically say what is or what has Rajko been doing or done so far in terms of reconciliation, overcoming those ethnic barriers that we all have, not only in Bosnia, but also in the wider region of the Western Balkans. That would be great. And then we could move to the second part and second sets of inputs. So Đuro, if you would like just a few thoughts from your side and info on Rajko.
Thank you, Vedran, and good morning and dobro jutro from my side too. Well, when I got invitation for this this webinar, I somehow felt more connected with today's topic, and I was more hoping for having the opportunity to give the input here. But I see also the relevance that both Dafina and I give some inputs for the later workshops. Anyway, Rajko was established by 6 governments in order to be one of these reconciliation tools and to foster a reconciliation process in the region. But if you ask me now, after 3 years, what is my, let's say, sense or what is my assessment of the program so far, I first need to acknowledge that in 2015 and 16, when we started our, first of all, process of Rajko establishment, there was totally different political environment in the region. I mean, still quite fragile, but there was some kind of positive atmosphere in the air, and it was at least my sense that we are progressing. Nowadays, I think that we are having not slightly, but significantly different environment, both on the regional level, but also on the national level, not to mention now European or global level. When it comes to Rajko, it has been established in a quite hectic environment with a quite ambitious idea to reconcile young people in the region. I mean, this is the main purpose of Rajko, mainly through programs and products of youth exchange, what more or less is not really about reinventing the wheel. Fuad already mentioned what is the core business of Rajko, is really to bring young people together and provide them with the opportunity to meet each other, to learn more about each other, and to somehow find a way to overcome all these prejudices and stereotypes that they are still having about themselves. And by the way, it's more than 50% of these prejudices and stereotypes are coming from their parents, exactly what Fuad already explained. But this is the way to make the change. This is the way to secure the impact, at least something tangible on the ground, is really to bring them together, to give them opportunity to meet each other, and then to hope for these multiplying effects, hoping for some direct experience that can be transferred to their peers, to their parents, to their friends, to their teachers back home. And this is in these 3 years, and after 3 open calls that Rajko launched, by now I think this was the most important part of our work. However, there are already a lot of lessons learned. One of the main is that we are not really that great when it comes to capacities of our schools and youth NGOs to absorb funds, in first place to write the good product, then to absorb funds, and then to implement them. So almost half of our budget for the moment is going into the capacity building programs and trainings. So we are not only talking about making them like a super, capable project proposal writers. We are also talking about developing these intercultural competencies of both participants, but also teachers, because as the topic is here in first place, I mean, education and our formal education system, I think that Rajko was managed somehow to step in with proposing some new methods and also somehow trying to bring on board mainly teachers from the civic education or teachers of English because they felt more comfortable to apply in English language. Unfortunately, we still have that obstacle, and unfortunately, our grantees have to apply to our funds in English. So for now, we are working a lot with also teachers, but also with the pupils from the high schools mainly. And after 3 years, I mean, it was more than 3 million euros, almost 4 have been injected through the grant schemes. We have granted, I think now, let me just go through this quick math. So now we are having 64 ongoing contracts. So around 150 grantees since 2017. And we do believe that more than 5,000 young people have been directly exchanged. And on top of these 5,000, there is this indirect beneficiaries of our programs, which might go nearly 50,000. So it seems a lot, but it's not really. After 3 years, I can say that maybe we were in the very beginning quite overambitious, expecting that things can be changed overnight. But after some time, we are first of all more aware of that it's really time consuming. It will really take some time to make the really significant change when it comes to attitudes, when it comes to these distances. But also we have to admit that lately, especially last year and this year, we are working in the really, I would call it not really favorable or not really enabling environment for the reconciliation process, because we still have this very, I would not call it nationalistic or right-wing, but still inherited narratives on the top level. By now, we have not mentioned actually that on the top level, when it comes to our governments, we are not really hearing those kind of words that should bring people together or make them at least feel better to meet each other and to travel around. Even take the COVID-19 and this Corona outbreak. Somehow we all swore to the regional cooperation, but then all of a sudden we just closed the borders and it was just forgotten. So, and then we were full of, you know, criticism towards the EU solidarity, but where was this Western Balkan solidarity, by the way? So I have to dose my input here because I'm representing intergovernmental organization. But after 3 years, I think the team of RICO has grown a lot. I mean, we are managed to somehow establish ourselves as one of the reconciliation tool, but also it's challenging to explain the real person. Because really, if you ask young people to go back at the beginning of this seminar, what are the really things that are tackling them, you will somehow be around employment and education in general, you know. But also we need to explain that RICO has not been established to really make young people more competitive on the labor market. And this is sometimes really frustrating because they used to think that if you have the youth in your name of your organization, then you also have to make them more employable on the labor market. So after 3 years, a lot has been done. A lot of mistakes have made, and we are in a way proud of these mistakes because it was learning by doing in a very unstable environment. I think that now RICO is quite well consolidated with let's say stable revenues and with strong partners on the political level, both here in the region but also in Europe. And I think that I can only maybe announce now, maybe talk a bit more. I think my intervention should be on Wednesday. I talk more about the plans for the upcoming period and the big project with the European Commission, which is actually going to be establishment of our new branded program for schools exchange in the region. I think that I should stop here and then maybe contribute later on.
Yes, thank you, Jura. I mean, there are a lot of questions related to RICO and what RICO can do as a very specific kind of organization that was born 3 years ago. And we will have the opportunity to discuss it a bit also on Wednesday. I would suggest now that we continue with the second set of inputs, focusing on the question after ethnic conflict. Competition from the victim mentality, and I'm very happy that Dinka Čorkalo-Biruški from the Faculty of Philosophy is with us to tell us the story and the importance of storytelling, also like from the Croatian point of view. Nora Ahmetaj unfortunately is not able, or so far has not been able to join us today, but it might be that she.
I'm here.
Oh yes, I see you. Yes, sorry. And Alexander Bautzal. is also with us swimming in the sea, but probably he will be still able to give us some inputs. So let's open it with Dinka's input, then Nora, sorry for forgetting to see you. This is simply because when I look at I see your face, but we haven't met in person, and I see just few numbers. It's not 007, it's not MI6, but it's 200022.
I don't know why is that. I don't know why that.
But that's fine. That's a secret code probably for some transitional justice stuff.
I have no clue what is that. Okay.
No problem at all. But forgive me, please. Next time we see each other, I pay the lunch for all of us. Okay, Dinka.
Yeah.
So the Zoom is yours, then Nora's and Alexander's input, and then we have kind of a second round of debate.
Okay, thank you, Vedran, for zooming me. So I'll try to give a general, let's say more theoretical framework of why is important to tell the stories and why this particular activity is important within our teaching history practices, actually. So in most actually post-conflict transitional settings, and our countries still actually struggle, as we just hear, in very different ways with the conflicts of the 90s. Confronting the history and conflictual past is one of the most demanding tasks. And I, of course, haven't said anything new, but this is really something that is very complex, very demanding. The burden is on the adults, but our subjects actually are young children and the youth, and they are those who actually should hear the stories from very different perspectives and from very different sides. So the process is of utmost importance for social reconstruction processes, or as we say, for reconciliation, for the process of building society, for building public institutions, and for the general democratization of the society. So in this process, education, especially public education, so basically public schooling, is a key building block, especially in communities and societies where former conflicting groups continue to live together within the same communities, within the same countries, and the countries in the regions are paradigmatic examples of such communities, of course. So confronting the past in such communities is especially complex and demanding, and where everybody feels victimized, where the boundaries of who was a perpetrator and who was the victim is not always very straightforward. There are many irreconcilable narratives of who did what to whom, when, and why. So from the social psychological perspective, we know there's this tendency to compete over the victimhood status, or what we call competitive victimhood, is one of the major obstacles for the process of social reconstruction or the process of inter-ethnic reconciliation. However, we also know that victims and perpetrators have very different psychological needs, as proposed by the theory of Nurit Schnabel, our Israeli colleagues. And satisfying these needs actually increases the willingness of victims and former perpetrators to reconcile with each other. So the first step in satisfying those needs is actually to understand what happened during the conflict. This aspect I would call objective history. So historians, facts, war crime tribunals, oral history, documenting the stories of suffering and victimization, all these processes are important in answering the questions, what happened in establishing truth and acknowledge human suffering. However, above and beyond the facts, there is a subjective history. So there are perceptions and family histories, and we cannot and should not ignore them. In the context of our everyday lives, as we know, it means that we have two parallel processes. So one is the process of teaching objective history or official narratives, if we may call it, in our public schools. And the other process is the process of how these official narratives are understood through the lenses of different family histories. And what I want to say is that in such complex social circumstances, we cannot ignore that people were on the opposite sides of the conflict, not necessarily as former combatants, but as family members or simply supporters. So in this regard, our societies are societies of living histories. Yeah. And we cannot ignore the fact that facing the history and confronting the past is actually our major task for the time being. So in this process, the role of teaching history is crucial. Schools have to be places where the children may feel free to ask questions, to doubt what they hear, to check their family histories, and certainly to challenge what they hear as the official truth. So it means that our history teaching should be critical by taking into account multiple perspectives and by offering a variety of experiences, including experiences of past victimization of others. So the picture the children draw is not made of black and white, but of different shades of very different color we may offer them in our public education. So these approaches take a lot of courage, well-prepared teachers who are open for discussion, who are open for critical thinking in their classrooms. And our classrooms, as we know, are still in far degree authoritarian classrooms. And our teachers very often do not like to be asked a lot of questions. We also need a lot of peer and other professional supports for our history teachers and other teachers in order to make the process constructive and creative. And this critical approach does not mean that everything is relative, not at all. It means that in order to have a full understanding of history as a chain of causes and consequences, it is our responsibility, so the responsibility of adults, to provide children with all the facts and perspectives so they may think for themselves, critically examine the facts, understand historical delusions and mistakes as well, and of course have a clear and firm take-home message about necessity to be active citizens in order to be able to prevent future conflicts. So to conclude, children must be supported in how they learn history, and this is responsibility of the adults and first of foremost of the schools. So I shall stop here and we may discuss further.
Thank you so much for opening those conceptual theoretical horizons that are quite important. First of all, the understanding of history as a living history with competing narratives, and then also mentioning so important points as doubt, just to learn, to ask questions and to doubt. And this, we speak, and the reason why we meet here, not in Mostar, is COVID-19 pandemics. And we have observed the rise of conspiracy theories and a kind of a new push to this post-truth kind of era. Yeah. And the US-American president, obviously, not only at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemics, but also continues to push the parallel kind of effect, which also is a kind of might be seen as a role model for some of unfortunately also politicians in our region. And we have seen a hyper production of conspiracy theories and different basically explanations for COVID-19 pandemics in the Western Balkans too. So we also probably have to ask what is going to change in this concept of living histories and how to create this kind of a doubtful questioning of official narratives, what is going to happen here after the COVID-19 pandemics. But we will, as we move towards the second and third webinar, we will also have the opportunities to discuss it. But thanks a lot for this kind of a very broad and important horizon that basically puts a lot of inputs into an important perspective. In the meantime, Samir Beharic has joined us I believe from Brussels. Samir, I will then ask you at the end of this round just to give us a few insights on the ICE and on your case where you were fighting so courageously to change something in your city. But let us go back or go to Nora to give us her input, and also to Alexander in Belgrade, and then try to round it up. So Nora, again, Zoom is yours.
Thank you. So let me move on when Dinka left about our responsibility, how we create and how we construct a good platform with validated facts about the youngsters, so they know what happens in the past, and they become more critical thinking in their way of thinking and in the way of creating their attitudes, constructing their attitudes. Actually, the entire subject of dealing with the past, or we avoid using transitional justice because it's more kind of, it seems confusing concept for those who don't deal with this this field. The entire idea of confronting, dealing with the past is that we create that platform. We gather facts, we investigate facts, we produce facts, we analyze facts, and then we put them in history textbooks, and then these history textbooks are validated by academia, by peer reviewers, and this is supposed to be the way how they are provided for children to learn. In my work, I've been engaged a couple of quantitative and qualitative research on dealing with the past, on reconciliation in particular in Kosovo, but also regionally, on how youngsters perceive and how population perceives and how different ethnic groups perceive the concept of reconciliation in Kosovo in particular, and in particular between two conflicting sides, groups, ethnicities, Albanians in one hand and Serbs on the other hand. In my daily basis, when I lecture a lot in the field, when I do lots of CSO work, but also lots of, I'm also engaged with academia and I'm doing research. There are most of the time that youngsters who are born after 99, after the conflict, let's say the age from 18 to 2022, there are 5 questions that I ask them as I see a very problematic, the answers I'm getting from both ethnicities. When I ask these youngsters, please give me the source that you trust most about what happens in the past, in the recent past in Kosovo, in the latest conflict, 98, 99. What the source you trust most? And I give 5 sources: history textbooks, academia, the media, the NGO reports, and the parents, the family narrative. With certainty, I would say 95 to 98% will say we trust families and the family narratives, what happens in the past in Kosovo. Absolutely, absolutely no trust in the media, no trust in politicians, no trust in academia, which gives me really signs to worry, no trust in history textbooks. Even worse, there are students who tells you, high school students, but also the faculty students who study history, that the recent past has been very poorly subject of study and also described, or also how it is served and how it is put in the history textbooks. That is really something to be worried. That is something that I think, and here we come to the storytelling. Here we come to the narratives that these youngsters perceive, they get from their families, and what is the narrative that they get? what is the experience that their parents experienced during the war and they are fed with and they trust mostly. How objective is that narrative? Who can contest that narrative? And what to do with these youngsters who really trust their parents and the family narrative and the experiences they have gone through, but they don't trust history textbooks. They definitely don't trust the politicians and the media, and which, in my view, is even worse. The academia also, in their eyes, is not an objective institution who, at the end of the day, should validate all the data that are gathered and put in these history textbooks or whatever reports that these youngsters are prone to study. I see it very complex. You know, we say that in the field of dealing with the past, transitional justice, we work for the future generations, that we create this platform with knowledge. But it's not our duty to convince our generations who has gone through these conflicts, because we constructed our own narratives about the past. Our job, our role is, let's do the best and create a pool of knowledge, a well documented knowledge for the youngsters, so the conflicts, other conflicts, new conflicts don't appear in the future. That is the entire idea why transitional justice and dealing with the past exists. And I'm not sure that 20 years, 21 years after the conflict in Kosovo, we have still two conflicting sides that live maybe side by side, have no clue about the history, not to mention the recent conflict. We have two curriculas. One is the Kosovo curricula for Albanian majority community, and the Serbian curricula, which is for minority Serbian community, with two opposing facts, different facts, and when this leads us. So I think the role of NGOs in all this puzzle is not, the NGOs and civil society work is not the only one that is to fill this puzzle and this gap. I think we need all actors involved in order to push maybe for better strategy and how to create the dialogue. To me is it's not only as in the words of these youngsters, how they perceive the donor community and the work of NGOs. They think is the entire, also the concept of reconciliation is something brought from abroad. It has, they think, but also I think it has to be organic, that comes from within, that we see that as a need from bottom up, not top down, from bottom up. We see that as a need, that we have to connect, we have to communicate, and we also have to recognize each other. If I recognize the other's identity, I recognize what the others has been going through during the conflict, I think that is the entire idea of building this bridge and dialogue between two people, two communities. I'm afraid we haven't gone that far yet in Kosovo, but I will give you another segment that, another finding actually, that in our 2017 research came out when we have done this research, in particular in North Mitrovica with both Albanians and Serbs. It was interesting to note that both communities told us, let us believe that the shopping centers for now are the only spaces that we can communicate and we can share some space and moments together. If that would be just maybe put in a different dimension, if instead of shopping centers we would have factories or whatever, swimming pool and university or education center or whatever, maybe that would create some space. Spaces are very important to bring people together and also be creative. So I think the entire concept of dealing with the past and reconciliation is not a dead end, but also is not a it's a process that lasts for a long time. We don't know. We know where it starts, but we don't know how long it will take. Sometimes I convince myself that working in this field, you contribute, you work, but you prohibit yourself from raising ambitions that you're going to see a result. I might never see results, but at least we have to work. And the results let the other generations in the future see when we started, what we have done, so they continue in this way. And the history really and storytelling and how we tell the stories, how we change the stories, what is the certainty in these stories, and how we combine these stories with other sources of information. That is another, in my view, even more complex topic. Thank you.
Thank you, Nora, so much for so many important terms that you also mentioned: pool of knowledge, organic bottom-up need for mobilizing, and also this moment of recognizing the other instead of demonizing the other, what is still happening almost on a daily basis. When you just were mentioning shopping centers, there is a very interesting book by Eric Klineburg called Palaces for the People: How Social Infrastructure Can Help Fight Inequality, Polarization, and the Decline of Civic Life. It's very, very kind of an inspiring book, how basically to reclaim those taken away moments, transferring public life to consumerism in shopping centers as a symbol, and how basically to restore also this kind of civic spaces, open spaces. And I believe, I mean, he doesn't have it in the title, but including education in schools would be probably something that I would see as a kind of a crucial moment of social infrastructure, where you then can keep on going with telling stories, etc., and teaching living history. So let us then also, I mean, the time is much quicker than we are, as usual. Let us move to Alexander and see his points, and then also the Fina Petsi wanted to say something, and then Samir, and make a kind of a roundup towards the end. So Alexander, please, the Zoom is yours.
Thank you for inviting me to take a part in this very nice discussion, and thanks to everyone who contributes, so that it's really very inspiring to learn about different perspectives, thoughts, and strong emotions about that topic, because it's understandable. It's about our lives and lives of our children and future of the region. And I would like to start just by one sentence of my former colleague, and he passed away more than 10 years ago, Stoyan Cerovic. Maybe you heard about him. So once he said that this region is the region where the history is less predictable than future. So this is really just because we are all fighting over history narratives, trying to impose to the whole society and community our version of the history. So history is always part of storytelling. So of course I understand in what sense we are using term fact, but of course this is in history the most prominent, but I believe it is also prominent in other maybe hard sciences as well, that the fact is always partially constructed. And if we have some kind of hidden construction behind a certain fact, in the post-truth society, this is the space for building distrust or mistrust to the facts, to the academia, to researchers. So this is, I think, the weak point of the whole structure that is very much misused. I would say misused because I share, I believe, our common devotion to the building peace and trust and collaboration. But we should not also forget that there is another side. The other side will use all opportunities to promote their narratives. And their narrative is the narrative of, yes, we are all human beings, we should be decent human beings and have good collaboration, communication, but at the end of the day, we are divided in different groups. And every group will take on the first place only their own perspective and interest. So this is not really, when we speak about different perspectives and interpretations of certain historical events, it's framed as a fight over interpretation. So that the other side will not take some kind of neutral position and really to try to see how things happened and how different sides contribute to certain events, but that everyone would take this opportunity to sell their own version. And I would say that I like very much this term competition over position of victim. But in some sense, and please don't take me wrong, I would be happy to come to the stage that we compete over the victim position. I believe that at the moment we are not competing, because on different sides, everybody knows for sure that they are victim. So there is no competition, because from my perspective, like I'm now speaking about perspective of people from different sides, from the perspective of one side, they are victim. And they don't see any reason to compete over with anyone else, because of course the other side is not is wrong, and they are just trying to present themselves as a victim in order to impose their interpretation over us. So I think that here we should also discuss about the concept of trust, because all kind of negotiation, communication, building joint framework of understanding relies on the trust. And it seems to me that political elites in our region, they play very nicely with this ground, because when they somehow, by their narratives, by their doing so, by official curriculum, media, they are developing mistrust between different sides. And if you have mistrust, it's very difficult to put people together, because if they don't believe, if they dehumanize each other, so they are the other side who doesn't have a good will, or they are really not interested to build something together. So somehow I think that this is the weak point of all of our intentions to build some kind of better understanding and to prevent dehumanization, because this is really the first point. When you stop to think about other people as decent human beings who have their experience, their perspective, so then it's very difficult to build anything together. And I would just like to remind you about our region. We are full of open conflicts, so that I believe that in some way Second World War was not ended for many people and families. So in Serbia still we don't have even decent history of what happened in that time and what happened after that, and how we are still divided society with different narratives, even regarding to divisions we had like 70 years ago. And still it's very difficult to even create conditions for people to discuss about these divisions from the Second World War. And could you imagine how it is difficult to discuss, for example, about divisions we have in the region regarding something what is much more recent, and we have much less communication between ourselves in everyday lives. And just for the end, I would like really to thanks for this example about shopping malls, because now I start to appreciate shopping malls much more from today. So thank you for that.
Okay, that's great. I mean, now the next webinar, and when we meet each other for the first time in real, we are going to go to the shopping center, sit in the middle somewhere, and discuss the possible paths towards some kind of a different education. Thank you, Alexander. I mean, it was not the most optimistic and most encouraging analysis that we have heard in our lifetime, but unfortunately, a very sober one. We will elaborate on this one, and thank you all, Dinka, Nora, and Alexander, for also putting like new terms and creating a kind of a conceptual framework for what we will continue to discuss, not only today, but then also on Wednesday and on Friday. So the FINA from Tirana wanted to add 1 or 2 sentences because his battery, her battery is running out of power. We have Jacqueline, but I also want to ask also Samir to give us a few sentences about the case of Jajce. I mean, we don't have a lot of time. We can go like for 10 more minutes. So if you could be just brief, concise, and we can pick it up next time when we meet each other on Wednesday, try to make a small summary and take it to the next topic. So Dafina, Zoom is yours.
Thank you, Vedran. Thank you to all of you for the contributions. I think it was very, very productive meeting, and it's very important to systematically discuss about these issues. I only wanted to make 2 comments. One, I would say that we should be careful when we talk about generations among, let's say, youth. I would say that there is a difference between those who are born on 90s and those who are born on later, 2000 and later. From the everyday work with the young people, we can say that those who are born from 90s, they do have a kind of narrative, which is pretty much influenced from their families. But those born after 2000, it can be a chance that they are without a narrative at all. So basically, it's very difficult to work with those which do have their mind shaped on a way, because whatever you try to talk about, whatever you try to offer them to read, they read it in their own way. But with those who do not have a narrative at all, it's much more difficult, because you have to start explaining things from the scratch. And I think that what is important here is to, through different projects, as Juro mentioned, which is bringing more and more schools in this dialogue, we should work on making young people understand how important it is to have this open-mindedness and accept a different thought, a different perspective. I think we can kill the topic if we talk about the topic. We should not talk about the topic. We should make them practice the intercultural exchange, make them practice reflecting upon different issues and understanding their similarities, not talk directly for the differences. Why schools? Because in my point of view, they are the most inclusive public spaces for young people. But we should not forget that in this region, and especially in Albania and Kosovo, and this is something that we have understood and perceived from the work done by Raiko, is the fact that they are not so good on exercising the intercultural projects. We do have a lack of capacities in pedagogical skills to exercise intercultural dialogue. There is a huge need to build capacities in the expert field, but as well on the teachers, which are dealing every day with these young people. And I understand that in the end of the day, changing the official narrative, as it was previously mentioned by Mrs. Dinka, maybe it could be a hard stuff, because this is not being achieved even in the countries which we are learning from, Germany and France. But what they do have is that they created some very good consortiums of academians, experts, researchers, and educators and youth workers, in order to give alternative horizons, alternative curricula, alternative ways how young people can exercise their critical thoughts. So I don't want to add much more, but I wanted just to say that we should be very careful from those generations which do have a handicap in their information and in the knowledge. And in the end of the day, we should also use all the new ways that they are using to get in their ears and in their eyes. Because if there is a huge influence from the family in some generations, I assure you that 15 years old, 14, 16, nowadays, they do not have that influence anymore. And they do not have the influence of traditional media as well. So we have to find always new ways and have a systematic approach and try to divide a bit the target groups. And the last comment that I would have is that since changing the traditional system, it's quite difficult. I would say that I would suggest that going through an anthropological approach, it would be interesting. Having more, I don't know, sharing of his stories, sharing of beliefs, sharing of good examples, how young people managed to get in touch, to collaborate, to cooperate, to create a new reality, and share these good examples everywhere. I mean, especially in those areas where nobody is working, like rural areas, areas which do have different economical difficulties, which in the end of the day, if a national paradigm or a national, I don't know, how to say, propaganda would be used or served, those target groups will be the first which will follow. So we should not, you should not forget for those who have always been out of circles, because those are that target group which can be easily manipulated. So that's for now, Vedran, and
thank you, Dafina. I mean, that's such an important question. We will definitely continue discussing it also on Friday, because I mean, this generational perspective, basically, what does it mean for a 16 years old boy or girl today to deal with all those issues from the past and from the present, and what does it mean for someone who is not that young anymore, as I am, for example. Thank you, Dafina. Let's go briefly to Samir. I mean, Samir, I mean, you have, and we have known each other for quite a while, and I'm sitting at the institute where you were having your internship right now, and I know that we could go on and on for hours discussing interesting issues. But what I wanted to ask you basically is, you together with your colleagues, you were fighting and you fought a war against something, and you managed to change something. Just to give us a few sentences and insights on why is basically the strong will that you were having crucial to overcome even some obstacles that seem basically sometimes quite or basically too big for us to be overcome. So, Samir.
Thank you very much, Vedran, for the invitation and for the platform. Just to give just a very, very brief insight for those who don't know, I was born and raised in the city of Jajce, and I finished primary and secondary school there. The primary schools in the city of Jajce in central Bosnia operate according to the two schools under one roof principle. So I attended the same school where we later fought for its reunification, so to say, or prevention of segregation. But I would go back to something very briefly again, what Ms. Ahmetai said. She said, we might never see the results of our activism and of our work. And if you had asked me this like while I was a student, or maybe even just 3 years ago, I would maybe say the same, because we have tried and we have fought over and over again to reunite the schools which were segregated. It didn't work. It never worked. However, 2 years ago, when this now already famous case of Jajce student and Jajce student uprising happened, only rare people thought it would be possible what we have achieved 2 years later. How it was possible? I will try to be really brief. First of all, the first obstacle that young people do face is not in the society in general. It's not in school, it's not in the media, it's not with the politicians, it's with their families. The first obstacle that they face is within their four walls. And usually, if they overcome that obstacles within the four walls, it will be very, very easy or relatively easy to go against the teachers, go against the student, the school principal, go against the media, go against the politicians. Because guess what? Majority of the teachers in Jajce high schools were against their own students, were against the activism of their own students. There were maybe two or three teachers who were very openly, proactively supporting students. And this is very important to emphasize. So we shouldn't be, creating in our heads, some kind of a paradigm where we think teachers in Yaite and school principals in Yaite were on the side of the students. One school principal was supportive relatively, while the other school principal was and is still so hypocritical that when students organized the protest in front of the Cantonal Ministry of Education in Travnik, he forbid them to go there. And he threatened them that they would be kicked out from the school. 2 years later, just a couple of days ago, OSCE announced that they will and how they will spend the money from the Max van der Stoel Award that we were awarded 2 years ago. And this same very principal accepted the money and accepted what has been given to the students, thanks to their own students whom he forbade to go outside. What I think here in this very particular case of the students in Yaite is that those young people have the friendships, their own friendships of this very small group. It was a group of 10, 15 people who have been supported by NGO activists, who have been supported by rare teachers of theirs, who have been supported by their families. And this was already a network of support, a platform of support that has enabled them and empowered them to work towards creating new normalities and new norms. Preventing segregation in central Bosnia, and even in Bosnia now, has become a topic that's not only discussed in Yaite, but those students who have fought to prevent segregation, 2 years later, after they have started, together with my organization, they have continued to give seminars and workshops for their peers throughout Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina in other schools where we see and we have cases of 2 schools under one roof. Currently, it's 56 schools across 3 cantons. So I think if Bosnian students, especially those attending segregated schools, continue to be supported, I will say this very openly, by the foreign embassies, by civil society, by even these kinds of forums of intellectual exchange. I think something that we might not thought that we might not see the result ever might become a result almost overnight. And I really applaud all those, first of all, parents who supported their own children and told them go forward and move forward, because some of them have risked their own working spaces. And we have even a case where a parent of one of the students got fired from a school as a school teacher for supporting her own child in achieving what we at the end of the day achieved. So I would stop here, and I would say this would be something in a nutshell. Of course, we would be able to continue on this. And please, last sentence. It's important to emphasize what we have achieved is not that we have managed to reunite an already segregated school. We have managed to prevent a segregation of a school that was planned to be segregated. So it's much harder. I mean, that's very important point to emphasize. It's much harder to desegregate already segregated schools, which are in status quo, and no one is questioning them, no one is questioning their existence, than what was achieved in our case, which was that politicians wanted to segregate school and we said no. However, even this is a very unique success, because something like that has never been achieved before. Politicians have been segregating schools and no one budged, no one cared. And that's why I think this is even a stream of hope and stream of possible future success. And I think we will, I mean, in any case, we will continue fighting on the same line. And I'm really grateful for the international support that came on this topic, including this forum. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Samir, for this stream of energy and fighting optimism. I mean, obviously, this is one of the ways to go for RICO, just to take Samir and Samiras. There are so many of them, replicate them and put them into all schools in the region. So you will basically, in a very short period of time, have wonderful results. Thank you, Samir. So we have run out of time, but I would love to, Jacqueline, raise the hand. just 1 or 2 sentences, and then I will give back to Harun for last few sentences. And if you agree, next time we meet on Wednesday, and I hope we see each other all together from the very beginning on, we discuss this topic of inequality, which is very much also related to different sets of segregations and discrimination. We can also wrap up today's discussion a bit and then take it from there. There will be a few other colleagues that are going to join us. So Jacqueline, a few words from your side, and then Harun, your concluding remarks for today.
Vedran, thank you for the Zoom. It looks like the discussion just started. So now after the all inputs, I think that we should stay for 3 hours more to discuss it. I wanted to share the experience of Center for Education Policy with 2 schools from Preševo. It's not connected to Kosovo, but still it's South Serbia where Albanians are majority. And it was one of the most demanding projects, maybe one of the smallest one, but the most demanding project for me. Based on OSCE study for learning Serbian as non-mother tongue, there were several recommendations. One of them is overcoming segregation in schools. So we tackled one really, really hard job to try to put together not just students, but teachers from 2 schools that for 30 years have no connections. They live in a small city, but it's completely segregated now society. Then, they talked us how 50 years ago, all the citizens knew both Serbian and Albanian. And now when you talk to the children of 12 and 13 that we worked with, they don't know the language at all. And it's important, to be able to tell story, the language may be one of the preconditions. I wanted to, is it possible just to share screen? Because I think the photos can, help me in saying what I want even quicker. Is it okay, Vedran?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not the host, but Harun should give you the rights in between.
Yeah, then it's Harun. Harun, can you enable?
Yeah. Yep. Harun is not the host at the moment, but I am technical support over here. You have request share screening in your own toolbar down at the bottom of the screen, and then.
But it said that host disabled participant.
Just a second at the moment.
Yeah, I just wanted to show you, at the beginning, it lasted for a school year. In the beginning of process,
Now it should be okay.
Okay. So this is just a few photos, during the workshops. Of course, you cannot tell who is coming from which completely segregated communities, but, till the end of project, we prepared the movie. And if it's okay with you, I can send you the links for this project and the movie. Just, as some of the participants mentioned, the teachers were the problem. And one seminar, we almost had, the quarrel between them coming from different schools. I'm not sure now, 2 years after it, do these kids feel empowered after participating in this program? Because even then and now I have the doubts, what did we provide them with? Are they now really empowered, or they may be even stigmatized in some way in their communities for, making friends with the other that is not desirable for last 30 years. And that is, programs like this have to have much, much bigger quantity to make the, critical mass to change something. So this is what I wanted to share shortly. And thank you again for the opportunity. It's a great platform. So probably we should afterwards exchange suggestions and links and experiences, because segregation is something very, very hard to tackle. My experience with the policymaker is, we gave to national minorities all their rights. They have schools in their language. So what, it's nothing being done on the integration, but, with giving different cultural and educational possibilities to national minorities, you actually show as the policy leader that you actually do not want to work on integration. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacqueline, so much, Harun. I just wanted to say, when it's 11:44, when you go on in a discussion and you don't feel that basically the time has passed so fast, that's the best sign for a very good discussion. Thank you all for today, Harun. Your last remarks, and we see each other on Wednesday. Wrap it up and take it from today's discussion onwards.
Mm-hmm. So thank you, Vedran, for leading the discussion. Thank you, everybody, for your inputs, for your great inputs. It was a great discussion. We, as everybody said, would need 3-4 hours to discuss all the topics that are currently very, very interesting from this perspective. The next webinar will take place on Wednesday, also for our viewers on Facebook. So it will take place on the 10th of June on Wednesday from 12 until 13:30. So 1:30 p.m. We will talk. The aim of the webinar is to probe the issue of structural inequalities and possible socioeconomic effects on the educational sector in general. It will explore the feasible paths towards introducing more education for equality and democracy in SEE, particularly taking into account democratic backsliding in power structures, as well as the phenomenon of the captured state and the economy. So thank you once again very much for your inputs, and we will see each other on Wednesday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Obzirom da sam ja prebacila hosta na Haruna, trebalo bi da nam je live automatski prekinut, tako da samo da provjerimo još jednom da li smo još uvijek live na Facebooku, pa da onda možemo...
Mislim da nismo.
Iako piše još uvijek, Harune, piše live na Facebook gore.
I meni to stoji, zato želim da provjerim.
Aha.
Samo sekundu. Malo prije kad sam prebacila na Haruna host, automatski nas je prekinulo.
Čekajte, ja ću prekinuti meeting, pa možda...
Harune, mislim da ti moraš prekinuti live stream.
Važi.
Moraš da prekineš live stream, a onda mi možemo ostati još sekundicu tu, samo da se dogovorimo za srijedu.